This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. The only change to the agenda is we're going to have an executive session to at the end to discuss filling the trustee position. And we'll move that to the end. Other than that, public comment. Any public want to comment? Guess not today.
I did include quite a bit of comment in my board report. So if you're interested in reading, please feel free to do so.
Sure. Believe it or not, I read every one. Next is approval of minutes. The minutes were in the packet.
I did not get, I got one piece of feedback and I made those changes. So I haven't heard from anyone else. So I would hope we can motion to approve.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make the motion.
That's Bob.
Second.
Okay. Second. Who did second?
Cami?
Hey, Cami. Okay, anybody have any discussion, comments, questions? If not, anybody opposed? No? Okay. Minutes are approved.
Wow. Phew.
Goes nice and quick. Treasurer's reports.
Mary, are you ceding your time to me?
Yes. Do you need it?
Yeah, probably. Okay, I sent everyone a summary of what I consider to be some of the bigger expenses or ones that you might have wondered about. So I didn't get any feedback from anyone. Does anybody have any questions about any of the financial records provided?
You want to do the records first, or do you want to do them in the order that they're on the?
No, any of the 4 reports, including off warrant. We'll do off warrant first. Any questions about that? If not, I would entertain a motion to accept the off warrant in the amount of $102,724 and 44 cents.
I'll make it. I'll make the motion.
Okay.
Sorry, folks.
Did somebody
Second.
Was that you, Cami?
Yes, I'll be the seconder tonight.
Okay. Anybody have any comments or questions? If not, is anybody opposed? Not hearing anybody, the off warrant is accepted. Now the warrant, Lynn?
For the warrant expenses, which were for that period, I see, were $24,763.48. I identified anything that was over $1,000 on the off warrant or on the warrant. And I also identified really the first one, which was this Albany Times Union. And that was just an error that they made corrected for last election season, which is why it's in 2021. By far the biggest was Upper Hudson at $10,000, which was the first quarter hoopla fees, because we pay those through UH Upper Hudson, and then did our portion of the overdrive fees, which is a once a year cost, which is why it was so high in this particular month.
Jill, isn't hoopla coming back to us?
Hoopla is coming back to us, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not it's actually, it's not coming directly back to us. It's we are purchasing it now through Upper Hudson. So not all of the libraries are
Oh.
purchasing Hoopla. So we're individually purchasing it, but because there are a number of libraries, we're still going to have them.
We're paying
Bill.
through them. Okay.
We're paying through
Right.
them.
Yep. I had the same question. Michael. I would accept if no one has questions, I would accept a motion to approve the warrant.
Authorize me to sign it.
Authorize Michael to sign it.
Do I have a
make
motion?
I'll make it.
I'll
Is that
second.
Mary?
Okay.
Bob?
Bob seconded? Okay.
I believe
Yes.
so. Any comments or questions? I apologize for the potential confusion I caused today.
Oh, that's okay.
You would think that after 28 years, and we've always done it this way, that I would pick up on that.
I felt better that it was somebody else confused, not just always me.
Okay. Any other discussion or comments, questions on the warrant? Okay. And is anybody opposed to me signing the warrant? Nope. Motion carries.
Okay, the next doesn't really require a motion, but I want to draw your attention. After the last board meeting, it became apparent that there was a kind of a typo on the budget line of this is the wrong one, of the profit and loss statement. So what I did was I showed what it was reported as and what it should have been corrected to. And because it was the budget line, it really didn't have any impact except a tiny bit on a percentage, but the year was only 4% over anyway, and only one of them even had an expenditure against it. So I just wanted to bring your attention to the fact that it was an error, it was corrected, and we'll move ahead.
Lincoln, did you say it was in the budget? Can you repeat?
It was in the profit and loss. If you look at tonight's February 9th, you go down under expenses, under operating expense, technology communications, it was the IT maintenance line of the budget line, and then the telecommunications. It was just a slightly wrong number in those two, which affected subtotal, but it didn't affect the actual expenditures. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to get that into the minutes. And then now we can go on to this month's, the February 9th profit and loss statement, which you have in your packet. And this year, we're right now, as of February 9th, we're 11% of the year was over. And there were a few expenses. I told you when they were significantly different from the 11% we would have, well, that represents the amount of the year that's over. So I don't think I have to repeat everything unless anyone has any questions. I tried to explain the variance as much as I could. Any questions on my notes about the expenses?
No.
And then under notes, I just want to make sure those of us who've been around a while might have noticed a few new lines on the P&L from past years. One is lost and paid, which is under expenses. And that just reflects when we refund another library. So somebody loses a book that was up maybe on interlibrary loan, and they give us the money to pay for the book, but it's not our money. It actually belongs to another library. We never really had a line to account for that money leaving our library. So that is now there. It's not a budgeted line. It's just more of a pass-through line. So up top on income, you see lost and damaged, and some portion of that lost and damaged will then start showing up under lost and paid. Finally, because our voters this year voted on a budget that included an unallocated capital reserve, which is the fourth line from the bottom on the second page. That now is a line in our P&L under budget, 200,736. So I wrote about it. If you have questions, email me, ask me. Any questions right now about that or about the P&L?
No.
Okay, then we go to the balance sheet. In the balance sheet, really the biggest change in the balance sheet just represents the expenses that occurred in the last month. So you will see that under the cash lines, we're down about 122,000 from where we were a month ago. And in the bottom line, we're at the same, about give or take 122,000 down, because we didn't really have substantial income. We did not receive our Skodak or East Greenbush infusion yet as of February 9th. So really the only significant change was to our cash position, reflecting the expenses we paid last month. If I have no questions, I will accept a motion to accept the P&L and the balance sheet for dated February 9th.
Can I have a question. Do you want
Yes.
that, should that explanation be in the minutes, or since your memo has that spelled out, do we need it?
The memo should cover it. If the memo is attached as part of the documents.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions?
We have a motion. Lynn, you made, or somebody,
I did.
did somebody make the motion?
No, I would welcome one.
I'll move.
Okay,
Okay,
that's to
Accept.
To accept the P&L on the balance sheet stated.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
Any further comments or questions or discussion? Not hearing any. Is anybody opposed? Not hearing anybody. I assume all are in favor. Motion passes.
Okay, thank you. I have one more.
Yep.
You got a memo from Jill dated February 11th. And it was, the subject was fiscal year 2021 operating budget transfers. And I think Jill is going to bring it up now. And this details, obviously, as we know, but for the benefit of Cammie, who's newer, we have a voter approved budget approved in September. Here we are in February. Things happen and change, especially this year. So this proposal makes some adjustments and transfers, reflect those changes. And so she's got a full list on the back page, and then it's summarized here on the front. It basically puts $4,000 more into reserve, moves a little bit here and there to reflect the reality.
Okay, thank you.
It does not change the bottom line.
Doesn't change the line
Right.
because it's approved by the budget, the voters, but it's 4,000, it puts 4,000 more into the reserve fund. So it basically reduces the budget for expenditures by about 4,000. And were there any questions on that? It did go out with the packets.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to accept the budget transfers as outlined.
Also move.
Okay, Bob, second.
Did
I'll
this,
second.
Cammie
this come
seconded.
from- I thought this was the one that came from committee, so didn't, but
Yeah,
I needed a second. I don't care.
Yeah, if it came from,
It was reviewed at the admin committee and approved by the admin
Okay.
committee to bring to the board. So I think it actually came.
yeah, so if we did it under admin, I might have picked up on that, but I lost it since we did it under treasurer, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. It's still in there.
Mhm.
Anybody have any further comments or questions?
So can I, just to clarify, is the motion made by the committee who presents it and then it's seconded by Bob?
Yeah, we can do it that way.
Sure.
What we should do in the future, what we should do then is have those motions in the category, in the admin committee category when we do
Okay.
those.
Good idea.
Okay, any further comments, questions? If not, anybody opposed? No? Okay. So done.
All right.
Okay. Next. Committee reports. Bob, admin?
Okay, the admin committee met on Thursday, February 4th. The committee as it's structured so far includes myself as chairman, Michael, Lynn, and Jill. Will be adding an additional member once we fill the trustee vacancy. We discussed setting our priorities, identifying issues that we're going to address throughout the year. Some of the issues that we are going to be talking about are the Skodak contract, a QuickBooks update project, discussing our financial review policies, a review of our current reserves and designations, and consideration of any recommended changes to those. Construction grant update, the salary and compensation plan update for 2022, and starting a search for our new business operations manager, who will be retiring in July. And we also discussed the development of a new formula for determining future payments from Skodak to the East Greenbush Library. And Michael and Jill will be meeting to develop 2 or 3 different optional formulas to determine which to present to Skodak. And a target date for that to be completed is March 1st, after which time we'll review it and then determine when we can approach Skodak to start negotiation. Then we also discussed the budget transfers to correct the errors in the 2021 budget, which Lynn just explained in her presentation. And finally, we discussed the trustee vacancy. A notice sent out to the community to solicit anyone interested in serving as a trustee. And we had 2 applicants. We conducted some interviews last Saturday, and we'll be discussing that further in executive session. And that's pretty much the admin committee.
Hey, Bob,
Yeah.
would you be able to email that stuff to me as your agenda so I can put something in the minutes?
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Bob or admin at this point? No? Service committee, Shay contacted us this afternoon that he had a calendar mix up and he wasn't going to be here till 8 o'clock or so. Why don't we wait to do the service committee and that till he signs on, and we'll interject it into the agenda at that point. And so let's move on to the next director's report. Jill?
Okay. Start with I'm going to start with showing you a data snapshot of all of the wonderful things in a quick view of what our amazing staff have been working with our great community to achieve in January. We had 4,695 people come through the drive-through window. That is a slight decline, 4% fewer people from December. But considering that we had to lower the number of people that came into the building, I think that number is still a pretty great number. We have 2,039 active borrowers. Our website visits went up 22% over last month. We have been, the website committee on our staff has been actively reviewing our different pages and looking at the traffic and trying to make some changes based on how people are using our website, and it shows that they are doing a really phenomenal job. We, members of the community, used our collection. They borrowed 25,073 items last month. That is, it's relatively stable from the month before. Most significantly, 1,104 people attended a program at the through the library. Now, these are virtual programs. These are our weekly story times, our Monday night book chat, our all kinds of programs that we have. That was up 274% from
Wow.
December.
Wow.
That is a huge number. Our wireless sessions, so that is both inside the library and also in our parking lot. Those were up 9% over December. And of course, our public computer sessions were down 87%, but that's because we stopped providing computer service. And so these numbers now are just the laptops being borrowed, not the in-person desktop computers. To give you an idea of some of our what we're doing at the drive-through window and how it's connected to our virtual programs, we have, in addition to just our regular books and materials that people are borrowing through the drive-through window, people are putting items on hold. 1,702 people used the drive-through window last month to pick up 5,418 holds. So there were more people coming through the drive-through window. It was relatively stable, just 0.3%, but 8% more holds were picked up. And again, this can be tied to fewer people in the building. We also, because we had fewer people in the building, we ramped up our online programming, and associated with that means our activity kits were increased. So we had a 48% increase in our kits that went out to the public. We had 584 youth kits that were distributed and 24 adult kits. So they include, you know, for the weekly story times, there are activity kits, and I went through an overview of this in my board report for you to get an idea of what is actually entailed in all of these kits. But for the adult craft grab and go, their craft kits, and the monthly kit this year, or this month, was Fresh Start, an artsy journal, and it gives you all of the supplies to do your own craft. And actually, we don't have capacity to provide more than 25. That's the capacity. The person didn't pick it up. That's something that if we had additional funds or additional volunteers to compile these kits, we could serve more people, but it's a relatively time program and inexpensive. And then we have our story time. So every week there's a story time services, story time. There are kits that go out for families to pick up. It includes, you know, a little manipulative and a craft and everything that's related to the theme with the Storytime kit. And then, of course, the mixtape for the children's. We had animal and something in honor of Martin Luther King and sculptures. So that has become a key thing that we're providing at the library right now, and it just keeps growing. Our digital checkout. So even though our physical checkouts are down in January, which makes sense because we have many people come into the building, our digital checkouts increased by 21% this month. And then I will just open it up. It sounds like I'm echoing. So is everyone else hearing an echo from me?
Yes.
I thought it was someone else, so I'm gonna just mute other people just in case. It's really I'm sorry if I'm muting you. I'll unmute you in a minute. Okay, is this any better or no?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay.
Yes.
So, yes. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Does anybody have any questions about this or my board report, which I tried to put the board report together this month in a little bit of a different format, a more narrative format. And I don't know if you had any questions or thoughts about what's in here, or if you'd like me to go into detail about anything. If you had any questions.
Jill,
Yes.
for the Wi-Fi parking lot installation that it seems to have been in the same status for like the past 3 months. So
Yes.
do we know like when it's going to be finished, or is it?
I think it's the 22nd or the 21st is our appointment with the electrician. So we finally have someone coming in. It's actually not the electrician that we're using for our construction project because he's not available yet. So we brought in somebody else because we just couldn't wait any longer.
Okay.
I really appreciated your feedback from clients, your community feedback. I mean, it was really interesting to read. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I mean, I think it was great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I actually like the format itself. It reads I felt it read smoothly.
I agree. I think it's a good improvement.
Yes.
So thank you.
Anybody have any other questions for Jill?
Well, I'll just ask one question. Am I the only one who has a really hard time printing out Jill's really pretty thing? Like mine won't print out at all, and it may just be me. I guess I am.
I tried to replicate it, Lynn, and I couldn't. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, so it's me. All right, I'll figure it out.
I didn't try to print it out. I'll try.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't have any trouble. When are the annual reports due to the state? I saw that those are on the.
Well, it was pushed off until April to the state, but they extended it until April, but it's due to Upper Hudson, a draft at the end of February. So that's my target, is to get it to Upper Hudson for a draft in February.
Is that something that we have to approve before you can bring it to Upper Hudson? Or I can't remember.
No, but before it gets submitted officially to the state, you'll approve it. So you'll go in, you'll see it at committee.
Okay.
And at the March board meeting, you'll be approving the submission.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything for Jill at this time? I don't see that we have Shay yet. So why don't we go on to the liaison reports? Friends of the library, Charlie.
Hi, everyone. So we just had a meeting for the Friends. Kind of the big takeaway from there, everyone was really enthusiastic to get an infusion of new books in the donation room, so we could get kind of build on the success of the grab and go sale for the bag of books. So we're gonna have kind of socially distant, safe donations kind of turning on next month. We're gonna kind of keep it limited for friends, almost as kind of like a kind of pilot project to see. So we think the response will be pretty overwhelming for people who've been reading a lot during the pandemic and cleaning up their houses, clearing out their books. So it'll give them an opportunity to donate and get some fresh stock in for the revenue streams that the friends hold. And what else? The kind of big takeaways. We've got the membership letter going out probably by the end of the week. I'm working with Liz she just sent me the draft to get that out. So then we'll have the membership renewals come through. The big takeaways. That's really it in terms of the big news from the friends.
Good. Any
Charlie,
questions?
did you say next month is when you'll start taking some donations?
We have it penciled in for March 20th.
So it'll be a day for donations, that's the kind of thing?
A Saturday for a
It's a
few
Saturday.
hours.
Yeah.
And it's going to be outside, probably right at the shed.
Okay.
Anything else for Charlie? If not, Holly, you're on.
Hi, good evening, everyone. How is everyone doing?
Good.
I know you're all muted, so you can't answer, but you all look good. As far as for the town hall is still closed until further notice. I'm not sure, when we're gonna be reopening it, so that's still pending. The police reform and reinvention collaborative plan, the work is still underway. We have a public hearing scheduled for March 17th. We've been working with the police department, community volunteers to review policy. We've had meetings on Tuesday evenings, pretty much every week since January. And the board's going to review the final plan in March 24th, because it's due to the division of budget by April 1st. And that's part of the executive order for like every police department to have their policies reviewed as part of the police reform collaborative. So that's been underway. We're also working now on consolidating the sewer districts. Like, I don't know if you all remember, but last year and the year before, we consolidated the water districts in East Greenbush. And it ends up saving everyone, the town and all the residents, a lot of money. So it becomes more equalized across all property lines within the whole town. So there's like 5 sewer districts we're going to be working on over this next year to consolidate into one East Greenbush sewer district. So that's starting. And we also had a presentation at our last pre-board meeting last week from a company called the Green Renewables, who are looking to open a business. It's pretty much a recycling, materials processing, mostly materials that can be made into mulch and things like that down at the port. And they'll be storing some of the materials that are processed there and on that site also. So they did a presentation to us, and we're going to move forward with approving that at some point. And what else? The new town park bathrooms, like the heated indoor bathrooms, are on their last. They should be open by next month in March. The painting's done, like most of the finish work is all done, and there's still a couple, like finalizing a couple of cosmetic things inside that building, but that's pretty much coming along too. So we're all moving along, and it's been a good month. That's pretty much. Any questions, anyone?
How did you guys do with the town motto?
The town motto, we're No, oh my gosh. I guess we are still taking any suggestions, but we pretty much have finalized what we've received into three, the top three selections, and the board will probably be voting on them and looking at it in March at our March meeting. So that's pretty exciting.
Yeah, good.
It's really good. And hopefully it's going to go on a sign, the sign that's down coming up the hill now, the welcome sign.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you, Holly.
You're
Tom?
welcome.
How's the county doing?
We're doing as good as we can be expected. Sales tax revenues are still strong, thank goodness. So that's we're holding steady financially. Regarding the vaccines, we are very ready to go once we are able to do full bore state vaccination at Hudson Valley Community College. We've had the vaccination clinics there. They've been incredibly successful. We've been able to disperse 100% of the vaccine, actually a little more than 100%, because of the way the vaccine is delivered to people coming in. So we're very hopeful that the federal government and the state government and then refer the vaccinations to the county for on-site at Hudson Valley to get these vaccines into the arms of the county residents. That's about it for now. Thanks.
Okay. I'm getting my second shot at Hudson Valley on next Wednesday.
Very good. That's excellent. Terrific.
Tom, I would just, if I could jump in really quickly, Michael, and just say thank you
Sure.
so much to you and your colleagues at the county legislature. We received the check from the county. We really greatly appreciate your support, as always. And also the really personal letter this time was really thoughtful. Thank you.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for all you do, and hopefully there'll be more of the same in the future. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Okay.
How much was the check for, Jill?
It was for $250.
Okay. Then I'll do quick Upper Hudson. Upper Hudson, we had a meeting last week. Biggest issues were updates. Well, a couple things. The advocacy that they do every year at the state is going to be done virtually this year. As I mentioned at the Friends meeting, it's going to be a little more controlled and possibly more limiting because they're going to try, how much can you do in Zoom type meetings with legislators. So if somebody is interested in being a part of it, contact Jill, because Jill will be our sort of contact to Upper Hudson, and Upper Hudson's going to organize it. The other things were the budget. The budget actually had some positive input. Remember last year the budget was cut over 20%. They are getting some money back. I guess in the end, there was some extra money or something. They're getting some money back for last year. And then this year, the governor's budget, which was issued, had the numbers in with a reduction of 7% from the base year that they were figuring, which is 2019. And that is significantly less than what we had planned. We had planned for a 20 to 22% reduction, which is where we were last year. So they have put back, they're doing better, and they've put back most of their cuts. Their staff all cut staff salaries, things like that. Those have been reinstituted back to full salary. And then there's a few things, there's savings that they can do to cover the 7%. The other big cut they were going to make is many of the outlying smaller libraries were not going to get the book delivery service every day. They're going to stick with what we have and do the delivery every day. That's about it. Jill, do you have any more that I missed?
No,
Michael, did you say the deliveries for all the libraries are now going to be every day again with UH?
They're going to continue. They had not cut it yet. It was going to be cut shortly, but then they got this news, so they're not going to cut it. They're going to stick with the everyday delivery. We are considered one of the larger libraries, so we would not have been cut. It wouldn't have affected us, so that's that. Okay. Anybody have any questions about Upper Hudson? If not, Jill, why don't we shift down now? We've done this to your memorandum, document 13 to extend the library hours on Saturday.
okay. Let me just pull that up really quickly.
There's Jay.
Okay, so I guess before I go through this, I just want to let you know that there is a typo in here. I'm so sorry. Please, if you could correct your own, it doesn't impact what I'm asking for, but it does impact our current hours. We are open, in fact, from 11 to 7 on Wednesdays and from 11 to 6 on Thursdays. I'm not sure what happened when I typed that, but it wouldn't be a meeting if I didn't have a typo. So I apologize for that. Essentially, what I'm recommending is that we extend our Saturday hours from 10 to 2 until 4 p.m. And I'd like to make that effective February 27th, if possible, with staffing. If for some reason we cannot get enough staffing, I would push it off to the next week. Just because it's so close in time, I need to make sure that I could get enough staff to work the schedule. But we will be able to do this without additional cost to the community. And just trying to slowly bring back some of our services as possible. And this is based on Saturdays are so far our busiest day, Saturdays and Tuesdays. The next busy day that we think we'll have is a Monday, and we would like to add Monday hours, but we are currently working on a internal capacity check with all of our new services to ensure that whatever hours we expand to, we can continue to do that with our additional virtual services once we have more people in the building. So I'd like to, we are planning to do that in opening the, but I won't have a proposal for you until the March board meeting for Monday hours, because I want to finish up. I want to finish reviewing that. But as of right now, I'd like to suggest that we increase our hours on Saturdays from 10 to 4. And then the other thing that so we did just increase our occupancy counter to 15 today, actually, and to 30 minutes. So that is something that we have done. Thank you for responding via email to me to allow me to do that. And that's something that we'll continue to do as it's safe. We'll continue to increase the number of people in the building. So are there any questions about potentially extending our hours on Saturday?
I think it's a wonderful idea.
Yeah, I'll second if that was your motion, I'll second.
I make the motion.
Okay, and second. Okay. Anybody have any questions or comments related to this? If not, is anybody opposed to us extending Saturday hours? And I don't hear anybody, so Jill, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and Shay is here. So now why don't we go back to the service committee? Shay, the service committee report, and the big thing, I guess, is going to be the COVID-19 paid leave policy.
Right. Yep. We spent a chunk of the time figuring out our priorities for the year, for the upcoming calendar year. Jill put together a list of maybe 10 or 12 items. There's a couple items that do have some time sensitivity to them that we'll try to address by, I believe it's April, that we need some of that, some of those decisions made, correct, Jill?
Mhm.
And then we need to, I won't get into that list because we had some discussions about, when we were going to address some of them, the time sensitive ones that you will see over the next 2 months for consideration. The COVID policy, I'm not sure where to start. We had some online discussion through Google Docs. We talked about it at the service committee meeting. I know, Mary, you have you had some concerns about where the policy stands at this point in terms of its language. I don't know if you want to cover that, what your concerns were.
Yeah, I had texted some of that to Jill and to the committee, actually. I was unable to figure out who this is going to actually apply to. But Jill had explained to me that it's for the part-timers. And if I'm wrong about that, Jill, please jump in. Go ahead.
It will mostly impact the part-timers. The policy is the way that the policy is written, it's for anybody. But the people that it will really impact the most are part-timers, because if you're full-time, then you will most likely be working from home. I mean, the only time it would really be impacting you is if you were very ill, or if you were caring for somebody who was very ill, and you would do that at a certain portion of your salary. It would not be your full salary, or you would take your leave. So it would rarely impact a full-timer, but it could impact a part-timer, because if a part-timer was on leave, they currently have no paid leave. And if a full-timer wanted to actually take leave and not work remotely, if they were able-bodied, the way the policy is written, or the intention of the policy is that if you're able-bodied, and this New York State law also makes these asserts this as well, that if you're able-bodied, that you can work remotely, you don't need to not work. But the intention behind the policy is to encourage people to actually share when they are sick, and not come to work when they are potentially sick, or somebody in their house has been potentially exposed because they're afraid of not having leave.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
I had a lot of questions about it. It was very hard for me to work through. I mean, I honestly couldn't understand a lot of it, but I guess my first question is, who pays for that? Like we do, the library, it comes out of the budget. Like, that wasn't clear to me. Is there some state fund that they're going to help reimburse? They're just mandating it, but is basically unfunded.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's unfunded.
And so, I mean, I went to the New York law, or whatever that you directed us to, and tried to understand it. And I just think that, I mean, I guess it would, in my opinion, it really needs more clarity, because I think the big thing is, like, who is deciding that an employee, let's say a full-time employee, is too sick to work and therefore doesn't want, it seems to me, from what I understand, and I admit I might not get it, that they don't have to use their PTO. They could, in lieu of it, if it was determined they were too sick, or maybe if they have a family member who's too sick. And that part was so unclear to me, like, how is that being decided? Because I can envision some full-time employees might say, well, I would much rather not use my PTO. Thank you. I will take New York State mandate. And so I guess, I mean, I may just totally misunderstand it, but when I read it, it wasn't clear to me how that determination was made. And it wasn't at all clear to me that it mostly was intended to help part-timers. So, I mean, I don't know if it means it has to go back to service committee for more clarity, but, you know, at some point, I guess we'd have to have some sense as to what is the money on this going to be. Especially if full-timers could choose to do it.
Well, so I'll kind of give you a couple of things were added into this policy, right? So this policy takes into account the New York State requirement to provide paid leave for someone who is under a mandatory COVID quarantine. Now, part of the problem that I recognize is that by the time you're under a mandatory quarantine, you've already passed it on to everybody. So the way that our safety plan reads is that there are certain exposures, and then you would be told not to come into work. And so what has been happening in practice is that then people work from home on those, you know, when there's an unknown, until they find out, until they get test results, or a family member gets test results, and then they come back to work, and then we're not exposing everybody else. It is happening fairly often that people are getting quarantined, but it really hasn't impacted operations at all, because most people can work remotely or do work remotely right now for quite a bit of their work schedule anyway. So we just work around it, and it's very simple. We have to provide paid leave no matter what for anybody. We just don't have a policy that says that we're providing that. The other piece here is that we have the New York State paid sick leave that just came out. So this policy includes a little bit of language from the New York State paid sick leave policy, which is different than this policy. And it also includes some language from Paid Family Leave Act, which we're not required to participate.
You just mute other people because it's really hard to hear you.
Yep. Sorry. I will do that. Okay. So I fear that my cover letter actually confused you because what I was intending to talk about in the cover letter is that we have all of these things that we should be thinking about right now. This policy is not trying to cover all of these things. This policy is a temporary solution for us to become compliant with the New York State required leave for COVID. But what the piece in here that I included that's different from that is language about quarantining, if I can find it. A precautionary quarantine, that is not included in the New York State. That is something that some parts of it are included in the New York State language, but not the pieces where someone in the employee's household is under a mandatory quarantine or mandatory isolation, or is suspected to have COVID but has not been tested and waiting for results. That piece is not in the New York State policy. The other piece that's not in the New York State policy is that employees are eligible for a modified COVID paid leave when they're caring for their child whose school or place of care is closed, if the child care provider is unavailable, at a reduced compensation rate of 2/3 of their pay, subject to a maximum of $200 per day or $2,000 over a 2-week period if they are unable to telework. I will tell you that I can't imagine anyone actually taking this, but God forbid someone's child is extremely sick with this, or they have no other option. I think that is something that we should be trying to provide, considering that right now every other non-government entity is required to provide sick leave and required to provide paid family leave. And we have chosen not to opt into those. So that is a piece that I put in here in this kind of extenuating circumstance to try to bridge that until we figure out if we are going to opt in or not to that. But I'm happy to continue working on this if this is something you think we need to continue to work on. What is making me uncomfortable is that as more people are on quarantine, I'd like to have a real clear direction from the board on what's happening with that. I mean, there's the legal requirement to pay for it, but we don't have a policy that allows us to do that. So I'd like to have something documented.
So, Jill, one question. I'm a part-time worker and work 10 hours a week at McDonald's, and I get put on quarantine. McDonald's has to pay me?
Yeah. For the hours. If you have a regular schedule, yep. If you have a regular schedule.
Now, quarantine time has been reduced to 10 days, right?
Yeah.
In New York, it's no longer the 14.
Right.
And 10 days from time of exposure.
Right. And the piece here that I would, yes, time of exposure. So it's not always 10 days for us. By the time we learn about that, it could be 4 days. But if you wait for the county to let you know, it could be after your quarantine period is over, just because of all of the different, that's my experience so far.
A friend of Denise is a teacher that happened to her.
Right.
She ended up being out 1 day on quarantine.
Right. And so that's my fear, is that, so far, I mean, I really don't anticipate this impacting operations at all, really, because, I mean, anybody who has to go out on any sort of leave, we're a small enough operation that people are coming to me. That's the requirement. They come to me, and then I work with that person. And, I'd come up with a project for them to do. I don't like to pay people to sit home and do nothing. So I'm going to come up with a short-term project for you if you don't already have things to do. So unless you're really ill, I don't see this as being, an impact to our budget and our service to the community. But I would like the board to approve something so that I'm not just,
I agree we need to approve something. I just think we need to do one more round on it with the questions and so on. And I was a little surprised when I saw the paid family leave thing. Your cover letter covered that, and the other one, the paid sick leave one, and those things start rolling in there. Those are discussions that I think we have to have separately. And I don't want I think we should have those first. That's just my opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Right, so that is not in this, that's not in this policy though. It's just I think I confused you with my memo, because that was the memo. I basically took the memo from the service committee.
You said there were elements of it incorporated into the policy,
The COVID piece.
into the COVID piece. So
The piece
I
that's connected. Mhm.
I think we really need to look at that.
My view is, my personal view is anybody, any employee, any board member, any staff person should be able to read that policy and say, oh. And when I read that policy, I said, if I just tried to put on a hat and say I'm a staff member of the library, and I read that policy and I feel it needs to be clearer. What does this mean for me? That's all. Like when I'm, this and that and the other, what happens, it sort of almost is more like that safety plan. I think that was more clear. Like what happens if I'm exposed? What happens if I'm this? What happens if I'm that? And then add basically a next step is, and what does that mean in terms of my sick leave or PTO or this or that? Because I just found when I read it, I said, if I was an employee, I wouldn't have a clue what this meant. It's just there are too many ifs, ands, or buts. So that I would really recommend. I know you want it, but I just think it's of no use if people can't understand it more clearly.
The feedback.
I reread the whole thing today, and Lynn, I agree with you. I felt the same way. And
Well,
I read the first draft, and I sort of knew, but I actually was more confused after today.
the other thing that, can I ask a question? Because
Sure.
there's the one thing that I found really confusing. So it's meant to try to make sure people aren't coming to work when they're exposed and to keep the workplace safe. But then it says you can do this up to 3 times under the policy. And the first time is when you can stay home and for others. And then the next 2 times you have to have COVID.
That's New York state law.
But that's in this policy, but that's what's written in the policy too. So in essence, it's a one, like people are being quarantined much more than one time, as we know. So that means we're going to have this policy and then an employee can use it once. And then the next time they're quarantined because of something, you're out of luck. You can't use this policy anymore, and then you're still not going to get paid. Am I misunderstanding?
No, the second time, 3 times you can get paid, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, but
But the second time it has to be true COVID quarantine, not suspected, I guess.
Yeah, but you, the employee, have to have it. The second and third time, that's how this reads. So it really, and the situation, the realistic situations that I think we run into are the employees are being quarantined over and over because they're, exposed or their kid comes home. It's not because they're getting COVID. So the policy isn't really, the way I was looking at it, it's not like we're really giving them much anyway. It's one time where they can maybe use this, paid leave, and then the rest of the times, which will be, they can't use it. Am I misunderstanding something, or?
They can't use it for, so basically what would happen is you would, let's say you were told we continue to encourage people to take the leave, and someone would call and say, can I come into work today? This happened in my family. And we would say no, and we'd say, go get a COVID test. And if their COVID test came back positive, then the leave would be paid. Otherwise, if it came back negative, then the leave would not be paid. And that's New York State law. So I included the minimums there. I mean, that would be up to the board if you wanted to add, you know, change it. You could add additional leave options. I mean, it's complicated, it's complex, and every time you look at the New York State law, you know, there's updates and changes, and it's, you know, trying to incorporate a lot of things into one thing. So I welcome the input. If we can figure out a way to clarify this and make this one page, I'd love it. I had trouble trying to do this, obviously, and I welcome your input. It'd be nice if we could, you know, agree conceptually on things so that I'm not just off operating in a rogue way, you know, because this is actively happening, and I think it's important to all be on the same page about that.
So currently employees that are in the situation, they're working, they're teleworking or.
Right. We have had, I mean, I can think of 2 people that did not telework because there wasn't anything for them to do for those few days. And it was just, you know, they weren't quarantining because of somebody else in their household. They were quarantining, they were taking the test, and it was okay, take the test, and when your test results come on back to work. Now, usually it was a part-timer, they were staff that weren't here every day, so it wasn't a huge impact on our budget, you know. But if it happens to someone that's a full-time staff member, you know, they're going to want to know, am I taking my PTO? You know, not most full-time staff members, librarians, all work from home regularly, but right now I have told our circulation staff that there's no more working from home because everybody is working, you know, their jobs are primarily in the building now that we're open, and we have shifted their responsibilities. So can I find things for people to do remotely? Absolutely. I can give people projects to do so that they're not off, not working, but I don't want them to be afraid to tell me because they're afraid to use their PTO.
Okay, I think there's enough here that I don't think we can just approve this tonight.
Oh, absolutely. It's fair.
So does it head to the committees next 2 weeks? And we put it back into committee?
If we do that, I would like to see input on the Google Doc from people to help with the clarity, because I didn't have problems interpreting it. I did have a couple notes to Jill when I read it the first time, trying to get, there's a gray area, I think, that I indicated that I was unsure what it meant, but we needed, you know, to get what you feel is not clear, or like you said, Lynn, you know, if you're reading it from either the perspective of a board member or a staff member, you know, I think we're going to have people submit what they think. I mean, because I'm really not sure how to go about this at service committee without the input of people on this Google Doc. I'm not going to, I mean, you know, in some ways, you know, I'll say from the perspective of my business, we took the New York State language and that was it, right? I mean, and so we're doing obviously a lot more in terms of trying to, you know, to tailor it to what we need for the library, but we're going to need the input of people on that. I think the Google Doc is a good way to capture that input, and I think people need to provide suggestions for, you know, for wording or language, or, you know, the approach that people want to see in the doc, so that we have something to, you know, work through at the service committee. That would be my recommendation over the next 2 weeks, to get folks to provide that input on the Google Doc.
Okay. Does Lynn have access to the Google Doc? Did Lynn get it?
No, because I'm not on that committee. So, but I have to if you gave me access.
And Bob doesn't either, I don't think. I would assume
No.
the admin people don't. So why don't we make sure everybody has that Google Doc?
Sure.
So can I just ask, is this happening with a lot of frequency? Do you have employees out under quarantine, with any regularity, or is this kind of a random or infrequent type of situation?
It's random. It was happening a lot more when the numbers went up. We don't have anybody out on quarantine right now. Vicki, help me remember. We haven't had anybody. The last person who was out was me. But I worked through that. Before that, I think it was a week or two before we had about 3 or 4 people all at once
That's significant.
that were out.
Have we
and that
had
was
anybody?
really high.
Have we had anybody who should have been paid but didn't get paid, or that would whose pay would fall in this category that, from our standpoint, would it be extra pay?
Yeah, we've had a part-time circ person and a full-time circ person who were on. One full-timer was a mandatory quarantine from the Department of Health, and we had a part-timer precautionary quarantine.
And
I guess that's my question is, if somebody's a mandatory quarantine, don't they choose to do this instead of using their personal time off? I guess that's part that I really don't understand fully, what we're proposing in this.
No, I think it's just required by law that we provide this leave for people.
Right.
That's my understanding of the law.
Okay, well, I'll take it. I'll try to.
yes, but I thought New York State said something that you have to provide, everybody has to provide 14 days of sick pay. I thought I read that somewhere. So that would be part of your sick pay. And for us, it'd be a function, since we just have PTO, which includes the sick pay. I think we have to figure out how that fits into it.
Well, that was part of my memo, why we need to address these things long term. And this was intended to just deal with COVID right now, but it is a bigger issue with the sick leave.
Michael, I'm not clear on the 14 days of sick pay for the COVID, because we didn't see that language. Or maybe I missed that language. I didn't see that language in what we got from New York State.
I thought there was a requirement now that every employer had to provide the equivalent of 14 days of sick pay for an employee, and part of that was to cover this kind of thing.
It says right in the memo. It says public employers of any size are required to pay at least 14 days of sick leave for COVID-19 quarantine leave. That seems to be not PTO. That seems to say.
Well, then I wouldn't, if we had sick leave, if you had sick leave, to me, that's an open question. I'm not saying which way I think it should be, but it is not clear. Is it 14 days of, you have to provide at least 14 days of sick pay that people can use for this.
Correct. I don't know what the answer is to that.
See, when you're quarantining, you're not sick. So theoretically, by old standards, you couldn't use sick pay. You have to allow people to use 14 days of sick pay for this if they need it. But in my mind, when I look at it, it would say technically that would be come out of their sick pay. And since we don't have it identified separately, it raises a question.
And it doesn't say.
Anybody that has a child in school has, if their child is in school, my children are not in school, but my partner's children are in school, and they have had to quarantine 3 times with their children because of other people in school. And so you run through it very quickly when you have children in school.
So when they quarantine, Jill, to me, there's also a definition of quarantine. and that's why I think we should move on, because this is getting way too big for here. But there's a definition of quarantine. Quarantine means that you're in a room by yourself at home. People bring you food. You have no contact with your family members or anything like that. That's true quarantine. And then there's the thing where in school, if you have a possibility of being exposed, you go home. And in most cases, schools, I think, are doing it remotely from home. And they can't go to school.
Correct. But then if
So-
you have children who are in quarantine, do we want their parents to be at the library until we find out?
So different, I will say this
Well-
because we have this at my work. Shenandoah requires a parent to stay at home with a quarantined child. They require that. So there, I don't know. Obviously, there could be different, different cases, different policies, but there are some school districts that are saying in their letter coming from, in this case, it was from Shenandoah, from Saratoga Department of Health, a parent needed to stay at home with that quarantined child. So, that's, you're right, Michael, you're going to start getting into definitions of quarantine, but then there's also going to be health, Department of Health regulations that are going to have to be followed. This is why I feel like we have to be as light a touch on this, because if we try to pin down every contingency and possibility, we're gonna write an encyclopedia, and I don't think that's useful for Jill or for us, because we're gonna try to anticipate things, and we'll surely miss the situation. So
Yeah.
So Shay, are you saying like that we should look at the New York State law, and that's much more succinct, and kind of go with that?
I'm just saying. I mean, we're a small business. We're 9 people, so it's much easier to just say, look, we're going to do the New York State law. I'm not saying that that's what we should do, Mary, because I recognize that we don't have part-time people. So your concerns about how it reads on a part-time person are entirely valid. I'm just saying I don't want us to go down a rabbit hole of trying to plan out or think about what happens in this case. I think we need to take a more try to be as broad as we can, but then say, look, we're gonna give Jill the leeway to make the interpretation, and if there's an interpretation that Jill needs to get board input on, then that's what we should. I'd rather do it that way than try to really hammer through a longer policy.
Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good.
I like that too. All right.
Okay.
So the game
I will email everybody the Google Doc.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Shay, you have anything else under service?
Just one other thing I realized in my notes. We also talked about advocacy and trying to figure out, creating a list of organizations that we feel we should have a presence or a connection with, similar to what Tom and Holly do for us. So the idea was to we'll put together a list and just be kind of whiteboarded and put we could put down Governor Cuomo's office, right? We're never going to have a connection to Governor Cuomo's office, but just put down a list and try to winnow down what seems reasonable and doable, and then we'll share that with the board for discussion. So that's the only other piece that I wanted to make sure we covered in the service update.
Okay. If I'm not mistaken, that covers the entire agenda with the exception of the trustee vacancy.
I believe you're correct.
So we should go into executive session to review. Those of us who were at the interviews, we can review with the rest and go over that.
There, guys, stay safe.
Yeah,
Okay.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
What do we have? Holly still here? Is that us now?
I think so.
4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, okay. Do we want to record this still, or do we have to?